Hey everybody, and welcome to a rehabilitating wild ride with Steve-O. You heard that right. Kevin Smith went to rehab, and the guy's an open book. He's just got to be my favorite guest ever. Certainly the first episode we recorded with him is my favorite episode we've ever done of the Wild Ride podcast. So we went into this one, I felt, with a lot of pressure to make it great. And man, he just starts off with, did I go crazy before or after the last time I saw you? And you know that rehab stories make for very juicy episodes. So strap on your seatbelts and let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, people of the universe, I bring to you Kevin Smith.
We're back.
Yeah, dude.
It feels like, when did we do this? What year?
A year and a half ago?
Year and a half ago. Had I gone crazy yet? Had I been to the Nut House yet?
August 25th, 2022.
So it's been 2 full years.
So no, I haven't gone crazy yet.
Wow, the Nut House.
I did. I lost about a year and a half ago, or what was it? About a year and a half ago, I lost my marbles, man, and went to Sierra Tucson, this facility out in Arizona. That helped me find them again. Do you know the place?
I'm familiar with that as a place that deals with compulsive acting out.
They also acting out. What do you mean? That's where they send the kids in school.
Right? Yeah. It's like a sex rehab.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, that acting out. Yeah. I thought you meant like acting out in class. I was like, they send children to this place? Like, put those erasers down. You were sending you to Sierra Tucson, you piece of shit. There are many, as they called them, tracks there.
Okay.
So I was on the trauma track. Eventually, they figured out what my problem was. It was dealing with some childhood trauma shit. They have the recovery track, the rehabilitation track, and I would imagine sex addiction is a track as well, but we didn't have any in any of the groups I was.
It's interesting. I've only heard of Sierra Tucson in the context of sex.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that right?
That's nuts.
Well, I mean, they have the Meadows in Scott, like.
Maybe it's Meadows I'm thinking of.
I mean, they.
So it's not that place. Yeah, nobody talked about having a sex addiction.
See what kind of programs
it would have been really interesting if they were. I would have been dialed in hardcore.
Well, they have a bunch of, you know.
So I guess the obvious question here is,
did they cure me?
Well,
no.
Did we cause it?
They you know, as you drive in, there's a little sign that says "Expect a miracle," and you know, when you go through the gates of any place, and if anybody's been, I've been a person that dropped people off many times, dropped Jason at many a place and had to leave many times. It was like, what an idiot. There I was going through the gates and going like, who's the idiot now and stuff. So at my lowest, which is when I was going through the gates of that place, I saw the sign and it said, "Expect a miracle." And I was like, what horseshit. I found the miracle. They saved my life and stuff, as far as I'm concerned. And on the way out, there's another sign, and the sign says, "You are the miracle." Now, if I had just turned around when I was driving in, I'd have saved myself a month and, 40, 50 grand. Find out I was the miracle. But they taught me that while I was there. Thankfully, I didn't pay for it. The DGA insurance folks pay for it. And that's, anybody listening, if you ever have anything remotely mental health oriented that you're curious about, wondering about, if you're worried about yourself, do not hesitate to tell anybody. I was made to feel more comfortable with the notion by my kid. My kid had been in therapy since she was 12 years old. So she knew all the lingo, knew all the speak. And when I spoke to her from the place the first time, she was like, "I'm so happy you're in the exact right place you need to be." She's like, "And you're talking about concepts that I've been trying to explain to you for years now." Like, it was weird. We related on a completely different level. And I always felt bad that she was a kid in therapy. It made me feel like, well, I guess somewhere we failed as parents and whatnot. And now I'm of a completely different mindset. There was a kid in there. This kid, you're not supposed to say names, so I won't say his name. So let's call him fucking David, for lack of a better description. This kid, David, was there, youngest person there. He looked to be like in his teenage, and he was like going into his he finished his senior year. He's going to be first year in college. So he was in this joint. And a lot of people in this joint broken as fuck, man, including me at that moment in time. Seeing this kid there, he had his issues or whatnot. But by halfway through the program, I was like, he's the smartest one of us here. He's getting his shit out of the way at age fucking 17, 18. He's going to understand so much better how to like regulate himself and keep himself out of places like this by the time he hits my age. Nobody ever gave me a break. Nobody ever, not gave me a break, like gave me the break to be like, let's stop for a minute. And you know as good as anybody, like Dame Fortune, you know, points at you and the door opens, you do not want to step out of the room lest they don't let you back in. So we work, and then one day we burned out. For me, it manifested this way. I'd finished up the Clerks 3 tour, and that was like nonstop for a couple months. And I describe it thusly. The performance version of myself is not the version that's talking right now. Right now, you're getting authentic Kevin Smith because we're talking about something real. Generally speaking, whenever you hear me talk, hey kids, it's me, that's the other guy, the person that I put on stage in place of me, the facet of my personality that's built for that sort of thing, for public consumption, for entertaining, child of George Carlin and Sam Kinison and years of Saturday Night Live and friendships across the years and whatnot. I created a version of me that I could put out there and I could just check out a little bit. Like, you know, nothing wrong with it. Imagine yourself as being in a car with a bunch of different versions of yourself, facets of yourself that at any given moment you give the wheel. As long as you take the wheel back, then you're fine because there are different aspects of you probably better at things than others. But problem was I had taken a back seat, let the other guy take over. And I was just kind of a passenger, it felt like, in my own life because I was in performance mode every damn night. And so one morning I got up and opened up the other guy. The other guy, I kind of represent him as like a larger Muppet version of me with rivets and shit like that. So that opens up and then I get inside. He closes, I control him. He looks like a kind of oversized, ridiculous version of me. So I opened him up and normally that's where I sit. Nobody was inside. So I have no way else to describe it except nobody was at the wheel, so to speak. That's when I'd kind of lost touch with reality. So I got scared and I talked to some folks, Jason Muse's wife, Jordan. I turned to her, I was like, what do I fucking do? And she turned me on to like 3 places. She was like, these are the places that sound like best dealing with what you're dealing with. And we picked Sierra Tucson. Excellent choice, man. Great people there. When I got in, I told them that story about like I opened up and I didn't see him, nobody was driving and shit. And Sean, who was my process group therapist, he goes, okay. He goes, I hear you. He goes, well, the good news is I could tell you right now, you are Kevin Smith. And he's like, and I know that because based on what you just said, the other guy, he's the one who does everything right. He is the right version of you. He is the one who has the perfect answer, and he's the one that takes care of business and whatnot. So he would never come in this place. He would never have need because he's almost perfect. You, on the other hand, only Kevin Smith could come through these doors. You're the one that's broken, so you are Kevin Smith. And I was like, can I go now? Because you just cured me. And he's like, let's just hang out. And so hung out for a month, learned a lot of things, a lot of terminology. I would never say I got cured by any stretch of the imagination, but now I'm aware of where things come from. Learned that I'm a deeply broken, codependent person, people pleaser. So anyone could get anything they need out of me at any given time. Couple that with Catholic guilt and shit like that. It's a power. It's honestly like knowing now what I know about myself is crazy. I haven't been taken advantage of more in my life because I am never mind a bleeding heart, just like fucking sucker bait and an inability, a fundamental inability to just say no. What they told me that came down to was at age 9. A lot of shit happened when I was 9. One of these events, like my grandfather died, and so my grandmother was alone. She lived right around the block from us. And so my mom was like, you should go stay with grandma because she's alone for the first time, ever in her life or whatever. So, all right. So 9-year-old me goes over there, and I stay there. And for the next 2 years, that's life. Like I constantly go to my grandmother's, spend the night so she's not by herself, live my normal life, go to school, play after school, then go to grandma's and sleep there, and then in the morning get up, go around the block. So throughout my young life, everyone's just like, oh my God, Kevin, he's so good. He goes and stays with grandma. And that was me learning my utility. I'm only talked about, useful, or beloved when I'm fulfilling a function. The function I was fulfilling was he's taking care of grandma, hence he is good. Got me attention, made me feel seen. So for the rest of my life, add to that, I grew up a fat kid. Naturally, you're not anybody's first choice in anything. So the more you can offer people, the the more they are likely to maybe let you stick around or involve you in their reindeer games. So this is all fascinating shit that I found out. Now, I regret none of it because it put me where I am today. All of those broken issues, and there are plenty more beyond that and whatnot, including, all right, here's the big shit. So when I was 6, there was a kid who played doctor with me and this girl, and he didn't play doctor with us. He made us play doctor with each other and told us to do shit. I was telling this to the therapist, like when I was there. We were walking around the track one day, and I was just telling the story about, like, when I was a kid, like, I'm pretty dialed in, like, sex, I said, because when I was a kid, like, this other kid made me and this girl, like, play doctor, and it was at he was direction and shit like that. And, you know, then he was about to make me suck his dick, and an adult walked past, and that kid went running, and the whole thing fucking...
When you say dialed in sexually, what do you mean?
I think I've had a heightened sexuality from a young age, and my friend has told me that, like, my currency in life is sex. I value that more than love or something like that, because being a fat kid, like, you were always going to be somebody's last fucking choice. So that is a currency in my life that means something. Right. If you're chosen sexually, then you're normal, not like monstrous the way I saw myself through eyes of body dysmorphia and stuff. So that fundamentally, you know, as I'm telling that story, the lady goes, why did you just walk past that? And I was like, well, I mean, I was trying to get to this point. And she's like, Kevin, that's pretty horrifying, no? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, what you just described, like, was somebody forcing you to do things and almost forcing you to do something and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I guess I really didn't kind of put it through that prison.
Point?
6.
Wow.
So you just minimized it. And
oh my God, there's the fucking word, man. It's like you went to Sierra Tucson. That's what they started teaching me. It's like, what you do is minimize everything that happens to you.
I don't know that we've ever had an episode which shined a brighter light on the value of working on yourself. And you don't have to go to a super expensive rehab to do it, which is why I'm so happy that this episode is brought to you by the good folks of BetterHelp. What BetterHelp is the way to get into therapy most conveniently and affordably, and they've matched over 3 million people with qualified licensed therapists. I believe very much in the value of therapy. I do it myself, and you can try it with 10% off your first month if you go to betterhelp.com/Stevo. That's better, HELP.com/Stevo. That's right. You get 10% off your first month, and there's nothing to lose, everything to gain. So go to betterhelp.com/Stevo for 10% off your first month, and let's get back to it.
Good or bad?
Oh, man. Good or bad? Oh my God, 100%. Yeah. Fuck, I could have saved a lot of money. Just went to talk to you.
Yeah.
I do. That's my big thing. Is like, and a lot of people do this. In order to survive, you make it very small and dismissible. You know, I think about the story I just told. I got off light. There are people that have to minimize some pretty horrendous fucking things that happened to them physically and whatnot. So that happened, and then at age 9, Miss Veiling in class, I guess I shouldn't say her name, my 4th grade teacher.
We can beep it out.
Right. She, you know, we were doing the Pledge of Allegiance and the Angelus, which is a prayer you say in Catholic school, like this morning prayer. You do one, then you do the other, and you do it over the somebody reads from the office loudspeaker, and everyone's reciting along and shit. So as we're doing that, Miss Veiling just comes over, she does the slow circle around the class and stuff, and she's an older lady. She comes up next to me, and right next to me, and stops. And, you know, when you're a kid and the teacher in class stop, you know, instantly you're like, what did I do? And I don't look at her, but I just feel her, like, staring at me. And I look up, and she is fucking staring at me, like, just boring holes into me with her eyes and stuff. And we finish the whole thing. The prayer ends. And it's a prayer. First we start with the Pledge of Allegiance, then we end with this fucking prayer about Jesus and loving and all this shit. As soon as it ends and the fucking PA goes off, Mrs. Veiling, I look up at her, and she's looking at me, and she goes, "The gut on you, Mr. Smith," like with this utter disdain in her voice. and then walked away and stuff. So naturally, I was like, I'm fucking disgusting, according to an adult. This is somebody who's in charge of my life, and adults, they speak the truth and shit, and she's an authority figure. And so shit like that, they were able to kind of break open while I was in that place. And they're like, all this shit leads to who you become. So of course you're like a fucking entertainer. Of course, like, you're a director. Like, the chick was going like, guy fucking literally directed you to do things you were crazy uncomfortable with. You'll never be directed again for the rest of your life if you're the director. I'm like, is it that fucking simple? And she's like, sometimes it is. In this case, yeah. We did EMDR, is that what it's called? Fascinating process where they give you these, for lack of a better description, paddles. They call them paddles, but when you say that, I think of ping pong paddles. It's not that at all.
Or a video.
It's these two, you put them in your hands, they're connected to this little device, this little box that periodically buzzes to ground you in the moment. Because what they're doing is taking you essentially on a hypnotic journey, right? They take you into your past. So while I was sitting there doing the MDR, they make you super relaxed and whatnot, talking cure kind of thing. And then start taking you to the moment and putting you in the room. And these things that you're holding alternate, vibrating on each side. They're meant to keep you in the moment and outside of the moment as well, so that this isn't really happening, because they bring you right back to that time. She took me, Kelly, who is my therapist, took me right into the room with Miss Veiling and myself at age 9 and all the class, and I was able to stand there as an adult and watch this thing like transpire. And they give you the chance to fuck with it. You can never change it or alter it, but as an adult, you can embrace the moment. And so she's like, talk to Ms. Veiling. I was like, what am I supposed to say? And which is weird, because I usually know exactly what to fucking say. But in this instance, we were way outside my pay grade. And she was like, tell her what's about to happen. And tell her what effect it's going to have for the rest of your life and stuff. And so there in the moment, like, I have this conversation with Ms. Veiling where I'm like, what you're about to say to this kid, he's not ready to hear. He's so fucking soft. Like, nobody ever fucking challenged him in life. He comes from a real loving family, and nobody's fucking hard enough to tell him that he's overweight. You're about to fucking break this kid, for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 fucking years. But conversely, you're also about to make the kid, because that moment makes me be like, that won't ever happen to me again. I'll be prepared in the future. I will make fun of myself before somebody makes fun of me. And so humor becomes your armor and your weapon at the same time, and your protection. And if you can channel that sense of humor in the right ways, well, it becomes profitable. And suddenly that's what you do for a living. I mean, sometimes it sounds so like simplistic, but the secret origins are that easy.
For sure.
And most people in entertainment, most of us are fucking broken, missing a thing. I grew up with wonderful parents. I can't even point to them. Like, while I was in Sierra, they kept going into my parents. And I'm like, honestly, those kids did good, considering they had no means, 3 kids and shit. Like, I'm now a parent. I'm blown away at the job my parents did. So I'm telling you, it's not like there. It's not within my parents and stuff. I grew up loved, but it was being a fat kid and being, going through weird moments like that everybody goes through. But then learning to deal with them by minimizing them and being kind of figuring out at a young age that my function was to be useful to people. Otherwise, why would they want me around in the first place? All that congeals into like what I became. So I'm glad, I found out, and it's been useful in moments where like I find myself falling into similar behaviors, or if I get sad over something for no good fucking reason, I realize like, oh, this is because of this, and this, the things you found out about in there. The best things they taught me, and the easiest things to relate to the audience, they're easy to walk away with, is number 1, put on your own mask before you put on others. They're like, that's your biggest fault, Kevin. You put on everybody's mask, and by the time it's time to put on yours, here you are. You're broken. Like, you're in this place right now. But the other thing which was incredibly useful was this. They broke it down thusly. They said human beings live in the present, but spend most of their time in the past and in the future. So even though physically we're always in the present, in our heads, we spend a lot of time relitigating our past, the things that have happened to us, the things we've been involved in, things people say in passing, the things people don't say when you say hi and they walk away. We obsess over these things, and we constantly retry ourselves. there's nothing to be done there. The past is the past. The only thing you can do with it is perhaps learn from it for the future. You know, maybe I won't do that, or maybe I will do this based on the reaction I had in the past. But sitting there and relitigating it and pulling apart does nothing, because there's nothing that's going to change. It's always going to be the same and whatnot. And the future is full of anxiety. At the end of the day, nobody knows what's going to happen. So when we think about the future, we tend not to think about it in a pleasant way. We think about the horrible things that are going to befall us and the ones we love and what we have to do or need to do in order to stop these things from happening. Most people tend not to be creative, you know, not to be writers or talkers or thinkers and shit like that. But I'll tell you, everyone is a better writer than fucking William Shakespeare when it comes to devising your possible future. When it comes to sitting there and going like, you know what could happen to me? We all get inventive. You know, we write better plots than fucking M. Night Shyamalan with weirder twists and shit like that. Because it's easy to think about everything going wrong in the future, because that's the human condition. But since nobody knows the future, and since you're only making up a fucking fantasy of what might happen, you could easily flip the script and make that a positive future. If you're going to think about like, oh my God, what if I get hit by a car? Be like, yeah, but what if I find $1 million? It's just as likely to fucking happen. So if you're going to waste your time thinking about a fictional future, make it a positive one. But you shouldn't really spend so much time in the future. It's tough for entertainers because your job is about coming up with something new and thinking about what to do that hasn't been done before. So you tend to want to live in the future. But professionally, sure. Personally, you can't. So they said you can't spend your time in the past. You can't spend your time in the future. The only place to be is mindfully in the present, because here is where you could. It's so fucking tough. It's so easy to say, and when you're in that place, you're like, "We support you," and you fucking snap your fingers, and you're like, "If life works like this, yes." You want to bring everybody to fucking Sierra Tucson because you're like, "This all makes sense." But the moment we leave this place, life is gonna fucking life, and the cracks are going to start to show, and it's gonna be hard to get back to this thinking unless you consciously remember your training and think about that sort of thing. But you're right. It's way easier to say than do.
It's tough. I have a question about the trauma work with the incident with the teacher.
Yeah.
Was forgiving the teacher part of it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Kelly was talking about that. She's like, look, at the end of the day, remember, she's a human being, and the reason she said this to you is because of a bunch of things that happened to her. So I got to let her off the hook.
Yeah,
but most importantly, she was like, talk to the 9-year-old. That was fucking fascinating.
Did you cry when you did that?
100%.
For sure. I did that too. And I hadn't cried in like years, and they're like, pull out a picture of you when you're a kid and say something, and I just started bawling.
It's nuts,
it's heavy.
Right? It's very heavy, especially when you realize that's the moment. Everything spins on 9-year-old fucking Kev. And, you know, her point was like, 9-year-old Kev is frozen in time. You started building the other guy the moment fucking Mrs. Veiling starts saying shit. Like, and you won't go through that again because of that. So somewhere in you is a undeveloped, developmentally arrested 9-year-old who never got to enjoy his childhood because he started adult thinking right away.
You know, when I think of my childhood, I'm currently scanning through it, searching for a moment in my life that was like that, and what I come up with is that it was always me instigating
You're the troublemaker. So you're the boy in the alley who's telling me to put my mouth on the chick.
But don't think about like 9 years old. Think earlier than that.
Well, no, I'm okay. As an example, I'm 2 years old. My first day of nursery school in Caracas, Venezuela, and
what?
Yeah, like I went to.
This is a collection of words I did not expect to hear fall out of your mouth like that. Well, you went to Caracas?
I was born in England, 6 months old, moved to Brazil, spoke my first words in Portuguese in Brazil. 2 years old, moved to Venezuela, spoke Spanish in nursery school. My mom picks me up from nursery school the very first day. And the ladies working there, they spoke Spanish. My mom didn't. They said, "Oh, Esteban, your son is tremendo," and my mom thought, "Wow, what a wonderful compliment." They just described my son as tremendous, but then she related this experience to some other people. They said, "Oh no, that's not good. Tremendo it's not a good thing." But you know what is a good thing? Performing at your absolute best, like I do in the bedroom about a half an hour after I take a bluechew tablet. That's right, because bluechew tablets, they've got the same active ingredient as both Viagra and Cialis, except they only cost a fraction of the price. And when you take one, you perform at your absolute best in the bedroom. Simple as that. And I love it. And if you think it might be a good time for you, the good news is you can get an entire month's supply of Blue Chew tablets absolutely for free. All you pay is $5 for shipping. If you've been thinking about trying this, now might be the time. To do so, you go to bluechew.com. Use the promo code STEVO. That's your ticket to getting an entire month's supply for free. All you pay is $5 for shipping. So one more time, go to bluechew.com and use the promo code STEVO. Now let's get back to it.
What is it? Tremendo is like
Tremendo.
this little pain in the ass. This tremendo pain in the ass.
Tremendo is terrible. Like, to put it into perspective, and it really pierced me. All these years later, I was watching the documentary Blackfish about the orcas, and there was a woman was on camera describing her experience with seeing her son had been working in this SeaWorld type place, was absolutely torn apart by an orca, killed by an orca, and she described the experience of seeing her son's dead body all torn apart as tremendo.
And you were like, Jesus, I thought that it was a good thing.
Yeah, and
Wow.
awful.
Can we stop for a second and just think about the notion? Like, most of us in this day and age don't think about being consumed or killed by something that isn't human.
Right.
Like, nobody births a child and goes, one day,
Right.
this motherfucker may face the ultimate trial against nature.
Right.
Man versus animal sort of thing.
There's a blessing and a curse in that.
In what way? What's the blessing?
I think that it's a blessing that we don't have to worry about being torn apart by animals.
100%.
It's a curse that
Nobody's prepared for the moment.
well yeah, and that we've made life just so easy. We've made it so that I mean, granted, you've got to pull your weight in some kind of a way, but we've made it. It's just so easy. You don't have to kill your food. You don't have, you don't have to. We've got all this time to just make decisions, to be outraged.
Well, yes,
to
and
be,
to think and to spend time in the past and in the future.
Yeah, but
When you're fucking facing down a bear, you're not going like, when I was 9, Miss Failing said some shit about me. But we have made life, like, it is a total success that life is to the place where we don't have to worry about all the things that kept our ancestors and people we'll never know meet, like on their feet at all times. But at the same time, obviously something is kind of lost because of that.
But the point about, like, the nursery school thing is that it was every stage of my childhood, of my life.
You were
every
the bad
stage.
kid? The bad seed?
I mean, I don't know that I could characterize myself as bad per se, but I was just so, like, I could not contain myself. I couldn't, like.
Yeah, but that's like being hyper. Were you, like, malicious towards other kids?
No, I wasn't malicious, but I was just compelled to just act out in ways that would make me the center of attention.
Jason Mewes.
Yeah.
We've talked about a version of this before, but like, he was the same type of personality.
But
There's a kid like that in almost every class.
Right, and
What
like,
is it?
Clearly, I desperately, desperately wanted to be loved. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to, you know, I wanted the kids to like me. And, God, in sixth grade, which would have made me 11/12 years old, my homeroom teacher wrote on my report card, Stephen so desperately wants the approval and praise of his peers, but everything that he does, it brings about the opposite result.
Wow.
And I only know that because as I was collecting materials, my sister provided me with all this stuff for when I was working on my first book. And she's kind of the family historian. Look, and I read that, and I thought, oh, it just pierced right through my heart.
Like,
you know,
somebody nailed it early on.
yeah, and that was just the story of my childhood. So it was like I created my own trauma, and it's so sad and tragic whenever somebody finds themselves wanting something so badly, but their method of pursuing it brings about the opposite result.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of situations where people find themselves like that. So I don't
Most
know.
addicts, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's gnarly, man. What was the? You said that you lost your marbles. You said that you attribute it to childhood trauma. But can you elaborate on?
Not so much childhood trauma. I don't attribute it to that. I attribute it to burnout.
Okay.
Like, basically, when I got there, they found a bunch of trauma, where it begins, and why I break off and develop mentally and become whoever it is I become. But it was more this is what I think happened to me, and they co-signed this. At a certain point, I thought I was real smart because I was like, oh my God, I don't have to just make films. I'm literally the thing. Like, they'll come see me talk. They don't even need a movie to watch. They'll just come watch me talk about making movies. So slowly over the course of my career, from like 1994 up until probably, I would say around 2010 or something like that, maybe that's when it happens, I realized that I can be myself for a living, like something you're familiar with. Like, you are the brand, so to speak. It's a horrible thing to say, but it's true. I'm the show. So if I'm the show, everything I do is an extension of the show. So movies are just part of the show. Standing on stage talking about movies, another part of the show. Podcasting, another part of the show. This is another part of the show. And I thought I was real smart because I was like, oh my God, like, I'm me for a living. So, like, I just have to breathe and I'm making a living. Problem is, if you are you for a living, the only time you're not working is when you're sleeping. I don't sleep that much. So I'd wake up and I'd be on. And you're constantly doing, and everything is part of industry at that point. Just being a human being is part of an industry at that point. And I think I burned myself out. I think I got to a place where I worked it sounds crazy because it's not real work, but I just worked way too hard. There was no personal whatsoever. Everything was serving the other guy.
How old is your daughter now?
25.
Okay.
What were you doing before you went in? Were you just like pacing your house, like, I think I'm going crazy, or I felt claustrophobic in my own skin?
Yeah.
What was the
what did losing your marbles look like? You said you lost your marbles, but how did that manifest?
I had two friends with me, and they still talk about to this day like how scary it was because like you weren't making sense. Like, and normally all you do is make sense, or just talk, but all the talk was like gibberish. And you know, when you start telling people like you're not sure you exist, like and people are like, uh-oh.
Or coming up with your own language.
Yeah. It seemed like both of them, I remember very distinctly being looked at with eyes that communicated if we had butterfly nets, now would be the time to break them out.
So you're talking like, what's his name, Terrence Howard?
Nah, I don't know.
Well, not as, I don't know as much about astronomy.
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
Stronger math.
Yes.
The early Greek philosophers, Plato, Aristotle, I believe that they made like very compelling arguments for our ability to prove that we don't exist being much stronger than our ability to prove that we do exist.
Say it again slower.
The Greek philosophers established there's a stronger argument that we do not exist than there is that we do exist.
If we don't exist, then what is that?
You know what?
Like the Buddhists believe that mind is the creator. So most of the shit that we give names to is just us trying to harness some form of reality. But if you take away the language and you take away the intent of trying to classify and name things, reality technically doesn't exist. Or, put another way, we literally invented reality, right down to the term itself.
I think that.
But are you one of those people that believes in that sort of thing?
I would guess.
And I'm not saying like this is a flat Earth type of theory. I mean, it's a way
Not
of
flat Earth.
thinking.
I think it's a multiverse.
I
type
think.
of thing.
Or is it even a multiverse sort of thing? Or is it like...
Take the example of video games.
Okay.
Okay. A video game provides the experience of space and time, but that space and time does not exist. It exists. It's an imaginary space and time, which does not exist at all, but can be experienced in a very real way. So,
what's the line? What's the basis for existence? Like, if it can be seen, does it exist? Or can
Consciousness.
if it can be seen,
but locations don't have consciousness.
Right.
Right.
But
it's argued that everything is energy, everything is consciousness, whether it's inanimate or if it's animated.
So nothing's concrete, everything is thought?
Well, I mean, if you take like solid matter,
Yes.
break it down to its smallest forms, what it is atoms orbiting around atoms. So there's really no such thing.
Vibration and
as
frequency.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you're right. Like at the end of the day, break it down to an atomic level,
Right.
and you don't even have matter anymore.
There's absolutely not matter. It's all energy. Everything is energy, and let's face it, nothing is for free. And that's why it's so important to earn a living in today's world. And that's why ShipStation is the most helpful when it comes to e-commerce. You build an audience online and you make things available to that audience. But how are you going to get the goods that you sell to the people who buy them without shipping? And ShipStation takes all of the different ways of shipping, FedEx, United States Postal Service, UPS, and integrates it into an easy-to-use interface with all of the different ways of selling, Amazon, Etsy, eBay, your own website, and puts it all together so that it's so simple to use. And on top of that, it gets you the best rates for shipping, which are normally reserved for Fortune 500 companies. This is how I have sold all of my merch, and there's been a lot of it. So if you want to get into the business of shipping goods to your customers with the best rates, then you go to shipstation.com and you use the promo code STEVO to get 60-day free trial period. That's right. Absolutely for free, risk-free. You can see how easy it is to use ShipStation, and for God's sakes, it is time to make ship happen. So one more time, go to shipstation.com and use the promo code STEVO for that absolutely free, risk-free, 60-day free trial. Now let's get back to it and ride this baby home. And, I mean, it just seems pretty boring for energy that's just a rock, but still the same thing applies. And, at the end of the day, doesn't change anything about our experience. It's certainly fascinating to contemplate what is, what may not be.
Right.
I think with the last time, and by the way, I came into this this episode with you today with quite I don't want to say nerves, I want to say anxiety or fear, but I came in feeling intimidated by where we set the bar last time. It was like I described the last episode with you as my favorite.
It was a great episode.
And
I heard from so many people after that episode, and they were like, "My God, you were great on Steve." I was like, "You saw that?" Like, I watch him all the time. And I was like, "Isn't he deep?" They're like, "Isn't that the crazy thing?" They're like, "He's one of the smartest people I've ever heard speak and shit like that."
Oh, well, thank you. I just, and these guys can attest that when asked who is my favorite guest, who was my favorite episode, it's always Kevin Smith.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
I'm inappropriate touching, but
that's
that
fine.
fucking means the world. That's how moved I was. I was like,
yeah, I love that. And
but that being said, every episode doesn't have to ring the same bell. You know, like every blowjob's a good blowjob, some better than others. And let's say we had a phenomenal blowjob last time, and this one's shaping up pretty good too.
I came in, you know, like, and that's just my nature.
Yeah,
you know, and it comes back to the.
I had a bar too in my head where I was like, "Hey man, last time we went fucking hard and we went deep." And people, again, in the real world, when people come up to you in the real world, not online and shit, but are like, "Listen to you on fucking Steve-O." There's a guy in Publix in fucking Claremont, Florida, who went for a good 3-4 minutes as I sat there, and just because he was saying all good things about the show and shit. So yeah, it was a really great episode, at least for me. I don't know, some people might have been bored, but
loved it, and I think that the feedback was universally positive. I want to go back to when you were talking about you know, the typical human failure to stay in the present, and how, you know, the past is full of regret and the future's full of fear.
Past is tricky too, because past also has nostalgia, and we love that. That's like fucking sugar, man. Oh my God, it goes down so fucking smooth. The older one gets, even in youth, I was a fan of nostalgia. In youth, I would look back on an episode of Happy Days I'd watched a week ago and be like, "Remember that?" So nostalgia has always been like in my kit bag, so to speak. And I love to dive into the past because I've had many happy memories. It's not all fraught with peril back there, but the problem is, you know, you got to be able to dip in and dip out without, like, because if you're in the past thinking about something pleasant, sometimes it leads to a thought, how come that don't happen anymore? Well, you don't talk to that person anymore. Well, why don't you talk to that person anymore? And then it leads you right back to
what do they call it? Recall? Euphoric recall.
What's euphoric recall? I
Euphoric
love that
recall
phrase.
is when you
like if you're in you break up with like you're in a bad relationship with somebody, and then you only think back to the good times. You never leave because you're like, oh.
Euphoric recall, cognitive bias that describes the tendency of people to remember past experiences in a positive light while overlooking negative experiences associated with some events.
I feel that about my mom. Lately, I've been realizing, like, my sainted mother, who I absolutely love to death, is a wonderful human being. But I realized that I've, like, kind of gotten rid of or overlooked the negative experiences associated with mom. And I don't mean like mom developmentally fucked me up, but mom was a very controlling influence in my life. And there was a period when I became a filmmaker where I wasn't living at their house anymore, and suddenly I was kind of like, hey, I'm making my own moves. That was fraught with growing pains for her.
Oof. You felt guilty about it too.
100%, because this is somebody like I can never let down. She's always been there for me. This is the human being that fucking put me in the world.
Yeah. My
biggest fan, my best publicist, so forth and so on. So the idea of, you know, pushing away, and again, being fucking very codependent and whatnot, there was a time when that I've kind of let go of, where, you know, mom made it hard, not hard physically or anything like that, but just because I'm the way I am, because I'm like, she made me codependent, like, you know, and that's not me going like, and because of that ... she ruined shit. But like, I have let go of that, the negative experience, and now when I see my mom, it's all euphoric recall. It's all like, oh, you know, and also she's getting closer to the end of her life. She's 78. She's been in poor health for like the last 2 years, really badly, in and out of the hospitals. So naturally, I'm not going to be like, yeah, but she did tell you that one. I mean, for example, like I make Clerks, and the whole fucking world, mostly it felt like, celebrated that movie, or at least embraced it. That's why I'm still here today. The strength of one fucking movie, the first movie. My mom's reaction to that first movie was, you spent $27,000 on this piece of garbage. Now, I tell that as an amusing fucking story and whatnot, but when she said it in the moment, sucked, and she felt that way and stuff like that. And she came around to a different way of thinking when she saw the rest of the world embrace it and stuff. But moments like that, like I have let go of in favor of
What was the
all euphoric recall.
$27,000 turned
I do the same
into?
thing with my wife, by the way, which makes sense because
You're dating your mother. That's
that cannot be said outside of this van because my wife is a mere 100 feet away, and if she heard that, oh my god!
Well, because they have
she'd
this
ram
thing-
this with her car.
They have the thing called the arousal template, and look up arousal template. It's set from like girls who are from like 4 to 9. How they see their father react in a relationship, that's what they're attracted to. For men, it's like from 9 to 14. What they so. Like, I hate saying this out loud, but like I saw my mom emotionally unavailable towards my dad. So it's no wonder why I kept attracting this like same emotionally type unavailable woman.
You
And
went for that.
but I didn't realize that until I'm like, what's this pattern that I keep repeating? Like, why? And it's like when a girl looks really good on paper and you're like, man, this girl checks all the boxes, you're just not into it. But then when they're crazier than and then you're just like, boing.
Yeah.
And that's all you want.
Challenge.
Yeah. And that's
So wait, what is the? So do the. I can't quite see the screen.
Go to arousal template.
But pull that screen out a little bit on that far side. Oh, there you go.
Go to like a Patrick Carnes arousal template.
Arousal template.
It's CAI.
This is why we are attracted to who we are attracted to.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be the opposite. I think if you're gay or you're lesbian, I think it's
It's not. I was wrong.
It's whatever fits your fancy. But
An arousal template consists of the total constellation of thoughts, images, behaviors, sounds, smells, sights, fantasies, and objects that arouse us sexually. They represent an array of stimuli that come from our early experiences, typically between the ages of 5 and 8 years of age. We must keep in mind that while our conscious self is easily aroused, much of it registers subconsciously. Such arousal templates were thought to be fixed. However, that's simply not the case because the internet provides easy access, anonymity, and opportunity to view a plethora of porn genres. Trained therapists like myself see clients who have problematically expanded their arousal templates by increasingly choosing more graphic, violent, in some cases, illegal sexual content.
what gets worse
That
and worse
got
and worse.
dark fast. It
Yeah.
took a turn. I thought we were learning about ourselves.
No.
Then we started learning about some horrible human beings.
And then I think they asked like Ted Bundy or somebody like, where do you think this problem started? And he's like, I was unsupervised as a kid and I found a porn at a dumpster. And then I was reading the porn and finally it wasn't enough. And so then I went to video. And the video wasn't enough. Then I went to like having sex in real life. And then that wasn't enough. So I started hurting people. And then it just
Why was
he's an extreme case.
I was going to say, like, why wasn't just having sex enough? Because you'd imagine that's a crescendo since it's the sexual template.
It's like an addict why isn't drinking enough? Why do you go to Coke? Then Coke doesn't work. You go to shooting it. Shooting doesn't work, and then you just.
But that's an example of an individual that's like fundamentally broken.
Sure.
To go past a
That's an
certain
extreme
mark.
case, but you can see how.
But the porn thing, I totally understand.
Yeah.
Like there's one thing like set up in your childhood, maybe the way your mom dresses, smells, whatever the fuck, like that builds some. So that's the first image you have of the opposite sex or whatnot. But it gets shattered the moment somebody's like, look at how many dicks you can fit in there.
Yeah.
Here's a video it's real. These human beings are real. This happened. And you're going to see like extremes of sexuality that you never dreamed possible. I feel bad for the kids who are raised in a Pornhub world.
Yeah.
It's
Because
quick and
the
easy.
bar is so fucking high. Like, think about it. When we were kids getting a first kiss, you're like, oh my God, that's everything. These kids, their first kiss is like, got to be anal level based on fucking what they've been ingesting.
Right.
First base is
It
DP.
starts with fucking DP. Oh, it's
I
so
think,
sad. I hate to be that middle-aged white guy who's like, we had it better back then, but honestly,
No,
for
but
that,
even-
we had it
It's
better
scary.
back then.
The implications of online pornography are really, really scary.
But not
Which I ain't
that,
even
it's like-
shitting on. Like, I was happy as shit in 1995, the day like I plugged in my fucking modem and and it took 5 minutes, but a fucking naked picture showed up. I was like, we are in the future.
I thought
This
you were
is the
gonna say,
Jetsons.
I thought you were going to say 1995 in the Pamela and
Tommy Lee video.
That was part of it.
I think
Yeah,
that
that
was
too.
That's how we
1995.
most of us saw it, was on the internet. But once, it was like, oh my God, nudity, free nudity.
Right.
Like, but who knew that I guess somebody might have known, but who knew it would lead to where it led?
Right.
Like, there are categories on Pornhub that just seem unrealistic.
Well, like the family one really throws me off because I'm like, I don't watch that. Like, who's like stoked on,
100%.
Back to looking into the future
Yeah.
with fear and anxiety. There's a school of thought that submits anxiety is an engine for greatness.
I agree.
Yeah.
Look, nothing is all good and nothing's all bad. Like, for example, finding out all those things about myself that led me to where I was in life, like, it didn't make me go like, well, now I must undo them, because I'm like, then I wouldn't fucking be here. Like, it's all part of the goddamn journey.
Can you type in anxiety greatness?
But I buy that 100%. But
Yeah.
that's a very what would be the term for it? Unstable fuel to burn if you're gonna
Anxiety
chase
leads
greatness.
to greatness.
The boundless possibility of our choices results from anxiety, which helps us grow and develop. He argues that we must grow past anxiety, and only then can we make an earnest effort toward changing our lives and achieving greatness. Nietzsche was a 19th century German philosopher.
I think that it's as simple as the idea that when you were describing.
Here's one. Do high achievers have anxiety?
The thing.
Common experience for many people, including high achievers. Despite their success and accomplishments, high achievers can still struggle with anxiety and the pressure that comes with it.
For sure. When you were describing how the average person is a great writer when it comes to devising and constructing possible futures, that
Predicting
could
their
be,
own
like,
doom? Oh,
terrible. I relate with that a lot, and I think that I'm very prone to believing, as a core belief, my default setting, that I'm gonna lose everything. Everything's not gonna be okay. I'm gonna lose everything.
I'll spoil it for you. You are going to lose everything, including your life.
Right.
There's no good way out of this that I've seen thus far.
I get it.
But right
Right.
now, that's not happening. That's the thing they always fucking told us in
Right.
the joint. They're like, that's not happening right now.
I know.
My wife says it better. Recently, she said by accident, and I was like, that's fucking brilliant and shit. Because I was talking about my mom, and I was like, my mom, she's got 3 ulcers. They have to pin one of them because they can't do all 3 at once because she's a 78-year-old woman. And, what if this? And I led down this fucking long thing, which was not made up, is predicated on what she's going through medically. But after a beat, Jennifer goes, okay, but back in real time, that's not happening. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm preparing for an eventuality that has not come to pass yet, and it's affecting my current situation. There's a book that they made us read in the joint, which is great, and you probably heard of it because it was on a bestseller list and shit. And I always get the title wrong because I want to say The Body Keeps the Score, but I think it's The Body Remembers. Can you look that up? The Body Remembers, The Body Keeps the Score. Try The Body Keeps the Score. Yeah, that's not the one, but it's The Body. Try The Body Keeps the Score. There it is. Written by this motherfucker. Brilliant guy. Great book. #1 time New York bestseller.
76,000 ratings, 5 stars.
Is a very effective
Wow.
piece of literature about the brain. But what it talks about, what I found fascinating, is it deals with trauma. And what it says is the body reacts to trauma. Like, no matter what's happening to you, if it's in your head, the body is going to react physically to trauma. And then that's where your fight or flight instinct kicks in. Your amygdala takes over and stuff. So there's a physical reaction when something bad happens to you, even if it doesn't physically happen to you. Now, if you relive that moment in your head, this is how powerful trauma is. The body remembers because the body keeps the score. So you could be thinking about some horrible thing that once happened to you 20, 30, 40 years ago, and your body will physically react the way it did in the moment that the trauma happened. The author found this out by working with PTSD patients. And there's a very powerful story in the book about a guy who had been in Vietnam, and he couldn't be around his family He couldn't be around his kids, particularly when they were laughing and stuff. And so he would go to a hotel and drink himself into a stupor, and he would physically seize up when his children laughed. And so the doctor was trying to figure this out. And this cat is one of the first cats that worked in the PTSD field, dealing with folks, who have been overseas or been in wars and whatnot. So as the doctor's dealing with this patient, it starts with the typical talk and cure. It outs that the dude was part of a unit in Vietnam that got slaughtered in the bush. He was the lone survivor, joined another unit. Instantly, they were like, we're going out and fucking getting blood for blood. And they went out and they went to a village and just slaughtered everybody in the village. But before they did, the last thing he heard before the massacre was the sound of the children's laughter in the village. So hearing his children's laughter brought him right back to this horrible thing he'd done. And the doctor was like, look, I'm not here to argue about the morality of what happened. We're here to talk about the damage that it did, and how the body, even though he's beyond this moment in time and he's gone on, he came home, had a family and stuff like that, is far from that trauma and that damage. So powerful and locked into his soul, into his body on a molecular level, that when you just think of this shit, that's why when you if you think about bad times, you can be right back in the moment. Your fucking brain can trick your body and vice versa to put you right back where you were when that shit was happening, even though you're nowhere near it. It's a fascinating fucking read, man. Even if you're not into mental health, it's worth reading. It teaches you a lot about how physically we react to the things that happen to us. Not everything's in your head.
Yeah. Do you have a problem with saying no to people?
Absolutely.
There's one of the best books that I found for that is called The Power of No.
Yes.
You've read that?
I've seen the book.
It's
I've
like 10
not
pages.
been able to read it.
It's not even that. I don't even think it's that.
It's one of those.
They have a little pamphlet, but it's like
They tell you to when I was in the fucking booby hatch. The
booby hatch.
You gotta build boundaries. They say.
Yeah.
That's what you don't have. You have no boundaries whatsoever, and it's okay to say no.
And you feel bad once you say no.
100%. The
And
way
then-
I was raised, you
Yeah.
don't. You say yes. You give help when help's needed. If somebody fucking goes through the trouble of asking you, how could I possibly say no? So yes, I found at my root that was one of my core issues, was the inability to say no, the inability to build a boundary and be like, look, just because I'm saying no doesn't mean I don't love you. Scott Mosier and I used to do Smodcasts for years and years and years, and he produced all my early films. One day, Scott was like, I'm done doing your stuff. I didn't get into this business to do your stuff. I got into this business to start my journey. And I have stories to tell, and I'm going to start that now. So Scott started saying no, which was something that I was not accustomed to for the first 14 years of our career together or whatever, something like that. But he was wise. Now I get it. Back then it was hurtful because I'm like, well, all of a sudden Scott don't want to do the shit that Scott always wanted to do. But Scott was like, I have to build some boundaries for myself. Like, don't mean I don't love you, but I'm here for me. Like, I gotta live my life, and here I've been living your life for the better part of a decade plus. So, understand. He never said it like that, but now I get it 100%. And when I was in the booby hatch, he was one of the first people that I fucking talked to and shit. And he was like, you're in the best place you could possibly be. He was a student of mindfulness. And so when I got out, I was able to talk to him and not have it be emotional about, like, where'd Scott go? It's like, oh, I know where Scott went. Scott went to save himself. And not from me, from whatever, from just, he had a path. He gave you so much time. And I enjoyed that time so much, I took it for granted. I thought it would go on forever.
So he parted ways with you professionally.
Yeah, we're still friends.
And he found his way, forged his path, and has done well on his own.
He did.
That's
and
great.
It was, as a friend, of course, I'm like, oh my God, naturally I want to see him go where he wants to go and be who he wants to be. That's where he wanted to go and who he wanted to be when we met in film school. Graciously, he gave me a dozen of his fucking best years to build all my stuff and whatnot. But when he went, naturally, I couldn't see that. I couldn't see, well, now it's his time. I mean, I would say that on the surface. Hey, man, Scott helped me. Now it's time for Scott to help Scott. But inside, I was like, why did he fucking go? Now I understand. Motherfucker had to build a boundary. Otherwise, I would have used them all up. You know, just because you love a person don't mean you can't say no to that person. And I've fundamentally my entire life had an inability to say no. It makes you very beloved, but it also uses you up. And people don't intend to use you up. I'm not saying people are evil and they're trying to suck you dry like a vampire and shit, but if you're doing for everybody and you're never doing for yourself, something's going to give. Now, in my head, I was like, well, I'm able to do for all these people because I've always done for myself. Because selfishly, I've made a movie, and selfishly, my life is about me and stuff like that. And so because of the Catholic guilt and whatnot of succeeding early at a young age, naturally, you want to fucking share the wealth and you want to take care of everybody else.
Does your wife
benefit from this?
Well,
fuck yes. When I came home from the joint and I was like, I'm codependent, she was like, marriage is codependence, Kevin. Like, she was not buying the whole, like, well, I have to make you less codependent. She was threatened by the notion of me finding out, me discovering what I was. Naturally, it was threatening because it threatens to upset the balance that she's enjoyed for many years.
What I was asking, though, is has your wife struggled with being like a hostage in the Kevin show? Like everything revolves around you. Like
Did you talk to her before I came out here or something? It sounds so achingly familiar. There's something I've heard from people in my life, people who I know absolutely love me and are there for me 100% and have supported me and helped me get where I've wanted to go in life. But this refrain I've heard a few times from more than one person, Jennifer being one, Scott being the other. It's tough living in your shadow, which I never think about because I'm like, I always bring everybody into the light with me, but don't matter. To them, it's like with Jennifer, I assume, and I've never had this conversation with her, but I've had this conversation with my daughter about her. I think Jennifer was a high school, like, pretty girl, cheerleader, fucking, she had her pick, fuck anyone she wanted, and only the good looking dudes. I've seen the people she dated and fucked in high school. She had her pick of the litter. Then she modified her expectations when she met me. She was like, well, he's not what I was looking for, but fuck, I can work with this, you know. And hooked up with me and thought that, like, naturally life would go on the way it had been for her, especially with, like, now I'm the guy that's like, oh my God, you're the pretty girl. When you marry somebody who's in the media or is an entertainer for a living and shit like that, like, you become invisible. Like, you know, her biggest complaint in life when it comes to my job is like, you don't understand. Nobody sees me. People will push me to the fucking side to get to you. I became, like, she went from being the high school pretty girl to, like, being married to the high school pretty girl.
Yeah.
And I imagine that's not pleasant at all when you're the focus of attention and suddenly your focus of attention is this fucking dude.
I think it gets worse than that, at least, you know, my experience. And it's pretty clear that when I phrased that the way that I did, I changed the Steve show to the Kevin show, because this is what I've been you know, like my lady, and I, you know, I don't want to speak out of turn or be disrespectful, but she struggles mightily with not just, it would be one thing if it was just the fact that I'm so pitifully self-absorbed and everything's just all about me, but there's not really a way out of this self-absorption, because everything actually does revolve around me. Like, everything I do, like all of my livelihood, all of our, you know, like even if I manage to break out of self-absorption, like, it all just follows me and swirls around me and by proxy her.
We can be exhausting to know, and not intentionally. Like, there are people who are exhausting to know because, you know, they like being irritating, that's their kink, whatever the fuck. We're just exhausting to know because of the absorption.
Yeah.
You put it that way. I always describe it as like, I live with my head up my own ass. Like, that's,
I don't know which one's worse.
That's how we pay for everything. Like, and so you have a defense at a certain point, because you're like, look, if I'm not thinking about me all the time, like, I don't know how we eat.
Right.
But still, you know,
some balance would be nice.
And sometimes it's hard to find that balance. Now, I don't make it about me personally, right? Like, when we're not working, when I'm not at work, it's all about her. Overcompensation, where she is the most important person in our world. And she is to me. But, you know, I am the financial driver. And it's not like, hey, I've got a good job. My job, what I get rewarded for from financial remuneration is just literally for being me. And, you know, that's means that every waking moment of my business day, I'm talking about me. And you could see that would get exhausting.
Well, that's the next title of your book, a self-absorbed people pleaser.
It's true.
How does that work?
That's true. I mean, it's basically, it's like being a meat-eating vegan. Like, these things should fucking cancel themselves out, but for some reason they don't.
That's funny.
It is, yeah, man. It's, you know, we're very easy people to be with in terms of being a provider. Yeah. Like, I would imagine whoever is in your care is well taken care of because you spend as many plates as I do, you work as much as I do. The pay, you know, the price they got to pay for that is like, you're going to hear my name more than you're ever going to hear any fucking word for the rest of your life. And not because I'm like, that's the way I want it, just because sadly I am, or for better or for worse, I'm in the Kevin Smith business. And I'm sure, and I know her. I know she's happy for me. She's like, oh my God, this is great. Good for you. It is good for her self-esteem. Fucking like he cracked the code, blah, blah, blah. But it does come with an exhausting price where it's just like, everything's about this motherfucker.
Well, Steve, do you ever just like have Lux plan the date and you do what she wants? Is she in control of date nights where you have to do whatever? Do you work out a deal like that, or how does that work? It's okay if you say no. We're working on it over here.
Does she listen to the show?
Okay.
Like, I can speak freely because I know my wife will never listen to a Kevin Smith interview. She's like, I get him for free at home all the time. I don't give a fuck what he says when he's on somebody's podcast.
Yeah, but you said that you know, when it's not about work, I'm doing whatever she wants whenever.
Totally.
Do you have something like that?
Do you make it all about her when it's not all about you?
Here's what I will say is that I don't believe there's been an instance where Luck said, hey, I want us to have a date, or I want us to do this, and I want us to, where I say, oh, no, like, I'm not willing to do that. Like, would it behoove me and benefit my relationship to encourage her to make suggestions like that? Absolutely. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that I've come up woefully short in that department. Do I, and God, I wish I could say with great confidence that whenever work is not at hand, that I make everything about her, and I think I've got some strides to make in that department. I'm not a bad guy, but I could definitely. I
had this conversation recently with Jordan, Jason Muse's wife. She runs our company. She was talking about her kids, and she's got a 9-year-old and a 1-year-old, and she was talking about one of the kids and how, like, you know, their need for attention and like how quickly they could flip the switch and whatnot. And she described the behavior as like, it's very narcissistic. And as I was listening to the behavior she was describing, I eventually had to be like, Jordan, do you think I'm narcissistic? And she didn't miss a beat. She goes, little. And I was like, seriously? She goes, yeah, but it's a spectrum, Kevin. It's a pretty wide spectrum. She's like, you know, you're tolerably narcissistic, but she's like, we do spend an awful lot of time talking about you. I was like, but that's the business. She's like, I know, but even beyond the business, like, whatever adventures you're on, that tend to be the adventures that we're all forced to listen to. And
I mean, can you be famous without being narcissistic? I mean, not, I guess, famous, but like
I'm self-loathing.
Successfully,
I think of myself as crazy self-loathing.
I guess look up characteristics of a narcissist.
I think what I believe me, this is a question I ask all the time. Like, in the era of Donald Trump, which has been for the last 12 years. Whenever they refer to him as narcissistic, sometimes I've turned to my wife and be like, Well, I like the sound of my own voice too. Am I narcissistic? She goes, Kevin, like you care about people too much. You can't.
There's the definitions right there.
Here, let's see. A grandiose sense of self-importance. Let's you and me do this one by one.
Yeah, I definitely.
All right. So grandiose
Yes,
a grandiose
check.
sense of self-importance. Would it be grandiose? You, as you've reported, you are the business. Like so,
Right.
it's not necessarily grandiose, and your sense of self-importance, which I believe me, I'm defending me at this time, is earned because you are the earner.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that counts. If that counts for us. Fantasies about having or deserving.
By the way, let me just say that this reminds me of when I was presented with what was called the 20 questions of Alcoholics Anonymous, which said that if you answer yes to one of those questions, there's a strong chance you're an alcoholic. If you answer yes to 2 or 3, it's like the goose is cooked.
Right.
And I did the same exercise in going through the list, and I did feel that, as we've just determined with that first one,
Didn't apply.
some were not applicable to me.
Yes.
But I did not have any no's.
I think
I aced the test.
I think it's like she said, it's a scale. And I think if we can litigate this, we should litigate it because nobody
Sure.
wants to admit to being a narcissist.
Fantasies about having or deserving.
I don't know if I have that. Like,
Yeah, I wonder.
does
I
that
mean,
mean
okay.
fantasies having or deserving like that person has? Would that be more jealousy or envy?
Let me interpret that
Okay.
one.
It's
I
fucking
think
useful information, kids. If you're listening, you're about to find out whether or not you're a narcissist.
Well, if we're gonna do this, we should do like a narcissistic test and actually do it live on.
I think I like the litigating approach.
This way, we might spare
Yeah,
ourselves because if
safer.
we take the test, we're definitely going to find out we're narcissists.
I'm not trying to let myself off the hook either, but when I see fantasies about having or deserving, it occurs to me. Like I've recently moved to Tennessee, and
How do you like it? What part?
loving it. I live in the
I hear
woods.
that it's like tax free, right?
Yeah,
there's
no
one of those
state
states and
no
stuff.
state income tax.
Oh, nice.
And I live in the woods.
I was just there. I fuck with Kingsport. I fuck with Knoxville recently.
I'm
Nashville.
outside
Memphis.
of Nashville,
Oh,
a
nice.
fair distance, and I have a sprawling property, 40 plus acres, and the possibilities for what this land
Yeah.
could develop into are just so endless.
Yeah.
And so like it occurs to me,
You know what
like
I'm
one of the
thinking?
first things
You know-
that occurred to me.
Sex cult, right? Oh my God! Because then you can sell the rights to Netflix. They make it a doc. Keep Steve O'Brand alive.
One of the first things that occurred to me is how fast I could go completely broken into debt just trying to make this place into a fun playground.
Right.
You know, which I want to do more than anything.
Right.
So right there is a
Fantasies
fantasy
about having and
and
deserving?
deserving. Like,
But is that
I-
any more of a fantasy of having and deserving? Like for you to be like, I want my house to be nice. Like everybody wants that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have fantasies about learning how to fly a plane, getting a pilot's license, and then having an airstrip on the property and flying in and out when I feel like.
But I
it.
don't think
Like I
that's what
said,
it
kids,
means.
like listen to the show because it's relatable. We all have the same fantasies of owning a private airstrip.
I mean, I would certainly.
I don't think that one applies to you. I think fantasies about having or deserving is like you see me with a Game Boy
Envy.
and somehow a Game Boy, but like you take it. Because
What a
you
low
want it.
bar, man! It's like,
Right.
give me that.
Yeah.
The only way I'm going to be happy is if I take your
I
Game
mean,
Boy.
but yeah, that definitely.
I don't
doesn't
think
apply to
that's-
me. I
Or deserving. It says like fantasies about deserving. Perhaps that's the like.
Well, how come
I'm-
that guy's? I deserve it.
Yes, I don't have
Right.
those really.
I don't know.
Even
if
when people
you have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely love for the people I love to do well.
All right, a sense of self superiority.
I've never had that. I've really self inferiority. I have to like. I know I'm good at like doing Kevin Smith type things, but that's it. So I have to
And-
pump myself up in every other way.
In our sort of orbit of addiction and recovery and the community of sober people, you hear people talk about having a huge ego but low self-esteem. They describe it as a feeling of being A piece of shit that the world revolves around.
Yeah, I'm not there.
Yeah.
I'm not the piece of shit part, but I know the world don't revolve around me.
Right.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah. So now, self-superiority.
Like, do you have a superiority complex?
I mean, I just think that I
Do you think you're better than people? I don't.
don't.
I wouldn't say that either. A need for excessive admiration. I definitely would say you don't have that.
You don't have that?
No, I'm just kidding.
Holy shit.
Yeah, your eyes were like.
The Grand Canyon needs to be filled every fucking day.
Is it ever enough?
Oh my God. I mean, and now, like, I've been that way since my career started, but now in the age of social media, normal ass people are finding that out.
Yeah.
Like, once you get a little attention, like, once
Sure.
there's like, hey man, you're a good boy. You need that more and more, and it's just the escalating level. Just like we talked about, like what's his name, Bundy was like, it ain't enough to jerk off. It ain't enough to this. It ain't enough to that. Soon, somebody just saying a nice thing ain't enough. You need a bunch, and you'll sit there and surf all day through social media, letting people tell you how to feel. That was the other thing that told me in the nut house. They're like, you don't know your own self-worth. All of your worth is dictated externally. Oof. You need other people to tell you who you are, that you're good, that you're funny.
We call that a lack of emotional sobriety.
Explain.
When you seek validation from external sources.
Story of my life.
Yeah, emotional sobriety is when you feel complete and derive your completeness and your validation from within.
Oh, God. Could you imagine being that motherfucker? Could you imagine being that person?
Eckhart Tolle.
But does your mood fluctuate depending on box office sales? Or are you just kind of like, I know this is a good piece of work, I'm happy with it? Or
no.
Are you happy?
Total
sad?
pushover. I could be like, look at this thing I made, man. Here it is. This represents everything that I feel. This is my total artistic expression. I love this, man. I spent years of my life working on it. This is everything I wanted to be. And if the audience is like, that sucks, I'd be like, you're right. Let's kill this fucking thing now. I sell out on shit so fucking fast, man. It has everything to do with what they think more so than what I think. They got here, just 4:30 movie, the movie I got coming out right now.
That it's well received.
And that's the only thing that made me feel good about the process, because up until I started getting good reactions to the movie, I was like, this is the softest movie I ever made, man. Why'd I fucking make this? Like, there's no edge here whatsoever. Like, fuck, man, this is an easily forgettable movie and blah, blah, blah. And then I started seeing the reviews, and I actually sat through a screening of the movie with the audience, and I was like, oh, shit, it's funny.
It's
like,
not.
I had no idea.
It's not soft, I don't think.
I do. I think compared to my other shit, nobody curses because it's set in 1986, so we didn't curse when we were kids. That came later on in life.
Was that kid supposed to be you?
Yeah, 100%.
Chubby kid.
I
wear
substituted
t-shirts in the pool.
100%. I substituted height for weight with him because Austin, the guy who plays him, is a little on the shorter side. So instead of being like gain weight to be me, I was like, we'll just play the short thing. But keeping the shirt on in the pool. I mean, I'm fucking 54. I still do it. I'm married to the woman I share a pool with, and who has seen every inch of my body over the course of 25 fucking years. But if we go in the pool, you better be damn skippy. I'll be wearing a fucking shirt. God forbid she see one of my titties floating on the water, proudly on the water. She'd be like, why am I fucking this half man at best?
We saw a GQ article with the title that it said how Kevin Smith became a trans-masculine style icon.
Yeah,
isn't that amazing?
What is a trans-masculine?
So trans-masculine is transgender, male transgender folks. So what does it mean to be trans? Trans-masculine people are people who are assigned female at birth and their gender identity and or expression are masculine but not necessarily male. Trans-mass people are often overlooked since our society tends to have a binary view of gender. So apparently my look, my very hockey jersey, jortsy, layers kind of look is a look that's been heavily emulated in the trans-mass community. And I was like, you got to understand, I've been made fun of my whole life for my style and my wardrobe. Like, he doesn't fucking know what he's doing. To have GQ write an article going like, no, he knows what he's doing, and a bunch of people want to dress like that as well. I was like, thank the Lord. That's funny.
Okay.
All right, wait, go back to the list. Go back to the list.
The author of that article was a trans person.
I think so.
Yeah.
I believe so. Okay.
Sense of entitlement.
Now, what does that mean? I don't feel entitled to people like, fucking, prima nocta, I get your wife before you. But I do feel a sense of entitlement to, like, think about it. To be an entertainer, you have to believe in your head and heart that everybody out there needs to know what's on your head and heart at all given times. And so for me, that is entitlement. I feel I'm entitled to tell you.
I'm gonna throw that in the self-importance bucket.
Fair enough.
That the entitlement thing, where my interpretation of a sense of entitlement,
Okay.
is whenever, like, I think of like drunk celebrities being arrested for DUI, saying, "You don't know who I am," that type of a thing. And
Or don't you know who I am?
Don't you know who I am? Like, really.
Reese Witherspoon did that.
Yeah,
which I thought was like the weirdest example of somebody doing it. I know you're Reese Witherspoon. I saw Sweet Home Alabama.
It is super important to me that I never suggest to somebody that they should know who I am, or
100%.
You don't know. That I'm confident is not in my DNA. But I am definitely acutely aware that when people do know who I am, that there are possibly strong chances that I'm going to get preferential treatment.
Yeah, life's about to get easier.
My position on that is that I never expect preferential treatment, but I appreciate it when it is afforded to me.
Same.
Getting out of speeding tickets, or
yeah.
Yeah, I got pulled over in Tennessee, and the guy said, "No fucking way, dude, come on!" And
I don't want to jinx it, but I too have gotten lucky a few times, including back home. I was like in a car that, this is going back a couple years, but boy did it smell like weed. And me and my friend were in the car, and I saw in the distance, I was like, "Is that a bunch of cops? Like, is that a road check? What do they call it? Sobriety check?"
Yeah.
Like, no.
Checkpoint. Yeah.
Checkpoint. And it fucking was a checkpoint. And there was no way out of it other than to just go into it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm opening up my window now, because if I open it in front of these fools, it's going to be real smoky and shit. Like a Cheech and Chong flick. And the guy opened my window and is a young cop. And instantly his face lights up, but not in the way of I know you. It lights up like, we got one. Oh my God, we got one. This car reeks of weed. And so he goes, what are you doing tonight? And I was like, and then the older cop behind him was like, it's Kevin Smith. He does whatever he wants. How you doing, Kev? I was like, I'm good, man. How are you? He's like, good. We just hanging out tonight? I was like, yeah. He goes, get out of here. Have a good time. And I was like, thank the Lord. Thank the Lord.
Wow,
thank the Lord.
That strikes me as particularly unusual. Like it's one thing for one cop to make a call by himself when he's alone. It's another thing for, it's like now there's
Justin Timberlake shit.
What do you call it?
They could, he could have. The other cops could have been.
Now there's he's making this subordinate an accessory to his preferential treatment,
That's
which
true.
seems like
I have had the single guy on the road. Cop pulled us over, forget what state and stuff. This is going back, and we had a bunch of pre-rolls in the car and stuff. And the cop came up to the car, real sweet, real nice. And was like, you want to go do this in my car? It's just easier than me standing on the highway. And I was like, okay. And I went and joined him in the car. And I'm like, I reek of weed, man. I wonder if he's going to smell it. We sat in the car and we were talking for 20 minutes. He's checking my license, checking my fucking car papers and shit like that. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm getting away with it. Finally, after 20 minutes, he goes, and exactly how much weed is in the car, do you think? And I was like, oh. I said, well, you know what? There are a bunch of pre-rolls. I said, but that's because I just come from a show and everybody just gives me a bunch of weed and stuff like that. He goes, okay, just weed in the car? He said, yeah. He goes, all right, we're going to bring somebody out and check and just hang out by the side of the road and shit. And they brought somebody in, another cop. They went through the entire car, found the weed and stuff, which I told them where it was. And they were looking for harder stuff. But he was like, okay, one of two ways to play this. We can go into the station and you file the paperwork so you can get your weed back. He's like, or we can just get rid of it here and move on. I was like, oh, let's get rid of it right here. Absolutely. So I had to sit there and pop open all the pre-roll tubes and throw them into the field
Oh wow.
right there and
He
stuff.
just came back like 20 minutes later.
I think he parked waiting for us to come back. And I was so glad to be like, this is in Oklahoma. I was so glad to be like free. No, we were on our way to Oklahoma. So it was the next state that's not weed legal. So I was happy for the cop to have let us go. I was not going to like, let's circle back and grab that fucking weed. We'll show him. I would guarantee you that dude was waiting.
I
Going
don't-
like, okay.
I don't think either of us feel entitled to that kind of.
No, but
situation.
slobberingly grateful
Yeah.
when it happens. Oh my God.
and you know what?
And sometimes, I don't know if this happens to you, but family members will push you forward because they're like, well, you
Right.
make the call.
Yeah, I
'Cause
mean,
we ain't getting a table unless fucking Silent Bob calls or something like that.
Yeah, I should be a little bit more transparent too, and admit that there are all kinds of situations where we're trying to make something happen, or we're trying to get some, and like the guys will name drop me on the off chance
That helps.
that inspires.
Hell yeah.
And 85% of the time it does.
And if it helps, if that's a key,
Yeah.
fucking it's a costly key. It comes at a cost. You might as well use it when you can, as
Yeah.
long as it's not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like most people are kind of like, what? You'll find somebody who likes your work to be like, oh, I'd love to help out.
Yeah. Yes, we're good on that. Now, exploitative behavior.
Now, what does that mean?
I wasn't going to interpret that to be a little bit Diddy-esque.
That kind of. Well, I don't have that. I mean, I feel like exploitative. Like I exploit myself. Like
Well,
a
do you
big
pay
time.
people shitty and then you work them to the bone because it's the pleasure of doing business with you, or like
Everyone gets paid.
or
and stuff.
exploitative?
Yeah, I exploit myself,
Look up
not others.
examples of an exploitative relationship.
I get, yeah, when you put it that way, that does make
That would
sense.
be like you be in pornography for me. I guess would be
Being
one of
controlled by a person or group,
Slavery.
forced
exploitation.
labor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
you're not a
type-
human trafficker. This is all Diddy.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. SA abuse. Yeah. No, you guys are good there. Okay. A lack of empathy.
I think I'm pretty good there.
Yeah, I'm pretty empathetic to a fault, sadly.
Okay.
And then frequent envy. But I mean, like, what is frequent? More than most? Doesn't everybody look around and be like, oh, I want more. I wish I had more.
I don't know. Do they? Do you?
I mean, I guess now that I think about it, I'm
I
never
almost
like.
don't think that
I
sounds-
do have thoughts of like. Here, I heard a story recently, and that was fucking. It really like knocked my socks off. So there's how do I do this without? There's a very famous movie that was directed by. You know what? There's no way to do this story. I can't do it. There's a director. Here, I'll do the short version. The director didn't work a frame of the movie, didn't shoot a frame of this movie, was combative and fucking they had to direct around this person and whatnot. They wanted to fire this person. The studio wouldn't let him. This person was protected. Finally, they got to a place where he had abandoned set. Fuck, I said the gender. This person had abandoned set, the director of the movie, for 10 days, so that it meant that they could fire this person and stuff. So this person never shot a frame of that film, was never in charge of this movie. Like, was, show up on set. If call time was 6, show up at like 10, 11, not come out till after lunch, say everything was fucking wrong and go in. Act almost like the talent, more so than the director. So because of guild rules and whatnot, the director still got credit on the movie, still got paid to make the movie, and also still got their back-end percentage of that movie. And the movie made $1 billion. So that director made $70 million and did not work on the film. It could be argued easily that he was an impediment to the making of that film.
Isaac, type in what movies have made over $1 billion.
How many movies have made over
But
$1 billion?
70.
Yeah.
First time I heard the story, I thought the dude said 7 million. I was like, yeah, well, that sucks. But then,
Was it the movie Tombstone?
no, but I love Tombstone.
You heard about that? Like the director, I
I
guess.
was around when this was going on. Tombstone. George P. Cosmatos came in to take over for
It could have been one of 55 movies.
what's his fuck, the guy who wrote the flick.
Yeah, I heard that Kurt Russell actually did all the directing for it, and but
Who is the screenwriter? Can you look up
screenwriter of Tombstone.
Yeah. Kevin Jarre. Jarre was the original director. Oh my God, does that say 2011 meaning Jarre is dead?
It looks like it.
Did he pass away? So Kevin Jarre.
Yeah, what else was he in? He looks familiar.
Well, he's a screenwriter, but he wrote Tombstone, and he was directing Tombstone, but he was kind of green, and
Yeah.
he ran into trouble with the cast and whatnot, and so he was shown the door, and George P. Cosmatos finished the movie. He's the credited director, but George was more about the visuals, the way I understand it. I believe Kurt was the guy that was given the actual direction. The person who told me that story about that movie that I told you, I said to them as a director, my first thing was like, well, then who fucking said action and cut? Like, somebody has to be nominally in charge. And they were like, there was a triumvirate of us. There was the DP was, since the DP is director of the photography, that the DP was in charge of the look and whatnot. So decided how many takes they went. If they got the look right, they signed off. Actors said this guy dealt with the actors in terms of the history of the characters, like knowing stuff about the people they're playing and whatnot. And then the AD was the director in terms of like, we got to keep going, or do normal AD type stuff. So there was no one central vision voice. It was literally created by committee. But anyway, this and Tombstone here, poor Kevin Jarre, man. He kind of got booted, and but that's a wonderful movie.
He wrote Rambo: First Blood Part 2.
And the Day of the Jackal remake.
The Devil's Own.
Devil's Own, yeah. He was pretty big
Mummy.
screener. The
Mummy
Mummy
was big.
He worked with my friend Jim Jacks, who's also passed away, who was a producer on Mallrats. And Jim would always talk about Kevin Jarre. Jarre's an amazing screenwriter. And look at all that work. I guess he was right. Okay, so not a lack of empathy and freaking envy we were on.
I think.
I mean, I
I'm
don't
just
know.
a
There are people.
self-centered douche.
That's it, right?
I'm
Like
not
we
a
got our head up
narcissist.
our ass, not a narcissist. Just a standard self-involvedism and not necessarily narcissism.
Self-absorbed douche. Okay, so I just wanted to run through a couple of things. I definitely had made a point to ask you about transmasculine. We covered that.
Yeah. I was so delighted when I saw that article. I'm like,
Nice.
oh my God, finally, dressing this way has panned out.
Your film, the 4:30 movie, is in theaters.
It's in theaters. Catch it while you can. It's in select theaters.
Exclusively
It'll be on
in
video. Yeah, right now, but that'll be on home video, I think, in like, I want to say mid-October or something like that.
Okay, get a load of this. AI suggested, because we asked ChatGPT what we should ask you.
Seriously.
Yeah, and one of my favorite questions, which was suggested by ChatGPT, was how do you feel about streaming versus theatrical?
Totally fine with
releasing
it.
movies?
Consume it any way you can, kids. I'm not saying like you got to go to the movie theater and stuff, because that's just not the way the world is these days. This is I shouldn't talk about this because I'm sure online people are going to be like, you fucking, I always thought he was a terrible filmmaker. Now I know for a fact. Most of the media I ingest, I watch on my phone.
There you go.
And I'm not supposed to say that as a director. I'm supposed to be like, you got to watch movies on the big screen and blah, blah, blah. It's time. It's where do I have time and what's in my hand, and here's the time, and now I'm going to consume some media.
I don't think you need to be sensitive about that. How much of the media that you digest on your phone comes from YouTube?
A good 90%.
90%. Okay, now this is what I love to ask people.
Okay.
What's in your YouTube feed?
All right, what have I been watching a lot lately?
True crime?
No. I'm not that guy. That's my old lady. She loves true crime. To the point where I'm like, are you taking notes? If I fucking die suspiciously, I'm telling you right now, my wife did it. And she did it because she'd been watching all these fucking true crime programs.
I think the more true crime you watch, the less likely you are to commit a murder, because you
She
see
says
how
that too.
everybody
She's
gets
just
caught.
like, you can't get away with it. She's like, ultimately, there's so many tells.
I mean, if you were to do it like completely at random, then yeah, you can get
she
away
said
with
the same
it.
thing. She's like, crime of opportunity. Those are the crimes that go unsolved for decades.
There was
it's just some dude walking past a house, saw a girl, snatched her, and that's it. There's no rhyme or reason.
Right.
There's no tracing it.
Right.
It's just crime
If
of
you've
opportunity.
got like a vested interest, like an actual viable motive, you're never going to get away with it.
No.
There was a movie called Henry, Portrait of a Serial
Fuck,
Killer.
with Michael Rooker, one of my
Yeah.
favorite fucking films, directed by don't tell me, John. God damn it, John McNaughton.
Yep.
He did later
Now-
on. He did The Last Seduction.
Go down.
Henry is Michael Rooker.
This is a guy who probably never even got caught by the end of the movie because he said you're never
It's
gonna.
based on Henry Lee Lucas, who did get caught.
Oh wow!
But
okay.
Henry is kind of their take on the story. But it has one of the fucking most
creepiest movie of all time.
and one of the creepiest endings too, where it's just like
I can't remember the ending.
so
Well,
car
let's not
stops.
ruin it.
It won't ruin it, but he'll remember. Car stops. Piece of luggage is put onto the freeway, and the car pulls away, and the luggage is sitting there, and you know what's in that fucking suitcase.
Wow.
Like it's fucking stark.
What year was this?
1990,
Pre-Clerks, I want to say
maybe?
90. Yeah.
That's not in the movie theater. I remember being like
Me as well.
scared.
They
Like,
have a sequel.
I don't
and-
think
and
it was
the-
made by the same people, if I remember correctly. But this was a celebrated independent film in the day, and Michael Rooker's big breakout. Like,
Yeah.
this is where he became a star.
I saw it in the theater in London, England.
Still works. Still, I watched this movie within the last 20 years, and it still works.
Within the last 20
It's still
years.
effective.
I bet, and he that was his whole thing. He was a serial killer, and he said you got to make sure that you don't repeat the same MO, otherwise they're gonna get onto you. You can't kill people you know. It was like he just killed strangers and at random.
And got away with it for a long
different
time.
different method every time. And wow.
Useful information, kids. If you're gonna commit a crime.
Right. Okay. So
Wait. So what do I watch on YouTube? A lot of old SNL sketches.
Okay.
They're bite-sized and make me happy and stuff like that. A lot of German Shepherd videos because I got 2 German Shepherds and I'm
wow.
kind of fascinated and shit. You see these military people train their fucking dogs to like,
Licks.
oh my God, and they move in unison and shit
Yeah.
like that. And you're like, this is possible. I can get these motherfuckers to shit outside the house. So I watched a lot of those. Oh, look at it. One of the smartest breeds in the world. I think, what, second smartest or something?
What's the first one? A Malinois?
That's a good question. What was the smartest breed?
Border
Ooh,
Collie.
Border Collie.
There it is.
Get the fuck out of here. No, I'm
Wow,
kidding.
golden retriever.
You're like, I got beef with that.
kidding.
Fucking wrong. So I watch that, and I watch a lot of political videos,
Okay.
especially the closer and closer we get. I've never been a political person in my life, but for the last 6 months, I've been.
It's addicting.
Well, it really is, and that's exactly it. It is an addiction because I don't know what the fuck it's feeding. Because I don't need
Your
this
reward
information.
center of juicy gossip.
Or we're gonna be safe, or something like that.
Could be.
I've got a different outlook on it, which is that I used to be concerned if I were to voice some kind of a political opinion, I'd be terribly sensitive about it because, I'm going to alienate 50% of my audience, and then I don't want to do that. And more and more, I think I've gravitated to we're just screwed anyway. You know, like pick your poison. It doesn't matter. Go red, go blue. It doesn't change the fact that debt's unsustainable and the country's going to collapse.
Sobering. That's worse than the ending of Henry. Scarier image than a suitcase on the side of the fucking freeway. Why didn't you call spoilers on this shit? How am I supposed to go about my day? My God, you're gonna send me back to the nut house, Steve-O. I'm gonna show back up and be like, help me find my marbles. Let me back in the booby hatch. I was real scared to leave. You been in a facility of some
I
sort?
have.
It's scary when you gotta leave because you're like, I know the moment I leave this place, all this shit is now gonna be fucking at the mercy of what the real world is
You
like.
got to put it into action.
You got to put it in action,
Yeah.
but also you're safe. You're in a bubble in that environment. It's like adult Disneyland.
Yeah, it was easy for
everything got
me.
soft corners. I mean, literally, I was in a room
Yeah.
with rubber doors and shit like that.
Yeah, I went from a psych ward to a rehab, from a rehab to a sober living. Like I stayed in a sober living house until I had 2 full years of sobriety.
Are you shitting me?
Yeah,
2 years in a sober
2
living?
years. And
So did you have like sober living pals? What we called them SLPs, the
Yeah.
escort that like
for sure.
goes
and,
to a place with you, make sure you don't do anything.
and when I left the sober living after turning 2 years sober, I moved into an apartment which was immediately adjacent to one of my sober buddies. And furthermore, our bedrooms shared a wall. Our headboards were pushed up against the same wall. So ostensibly, if I was feeling, panicked or unsafe, I could knock
Knock on the wall. Conversely, if you jerked
Yeah.
off, he heard you the whole time.
That was what I loved so much about being in sober living. I had a roommate, but he snored heavily. So I knew when the coast was clear.
He's cranking it up.
I called it the sweet sound of snoring.
That was the one thing, man. Like the whole time I was in there, I'd never jerked off the whole time.
Oh, wow.
That's how fucking scared and my mind is gone. I was like, I was more interested in my brain than my dick.
Did you ever jerk off in prison? Or not in prison, in jail when you went to jail?
I snuck one out in jail one time. It was a real
What was,
sneaker.
what was the visual?
Oh yeah.
It was just
Oh, yeah.
pure
Like
spank
you
bang.
owned the place.
I was using
Old.
it back with a James Bond book because there was a cartoon that was a chick in a bikini. So
That's so
that's what I was
funny.
using.
Yeah.
That's what did it.
Yeah, that's what did it for me.
Well, I'm glad that you're in a better place.
Yeah, it was crazy when they were like, "Hey man, you want to do Steve-O?" I was like, "Fuck yeah!" And I was trying to remember, and I meant to one of my tasks I'd set up for myself was go back and look at the podcast and see if it was before or after I went crazy. So I'm glad that it was after because we had something to talk about. Otherwise, I'd be like, "Well, let's just talk about the same shit we talked about last time."
Well,
now I had a whole bunch of new shit to talk about.
Yeah, I don't
Go
think
crazy,
we-
kids! You'll have new things to talk about on podcasts.
Good material.
I refreshed my memory on what we spoke of last time. I felt confident.
NDEs.
Felt very confident that we would have no need to rehash
We'd go new
old
places.
subject matter. And
Did you look at the entire episode? Are you familiar with the
Didn't-
contents?
didn't
Did I tell you
I
about-
scrolled through it.
The role that Jackass played in the rating of Zack and Miri Make a Porno?
Ooh,
All right, let
don't
me
think
tell
so.
you that. So we're ending because this is a
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
ending story.
good.
So this is where we've only started fucking with each other since we started doing the podcast,
Yeah.
whatever it was. But you were, of course, naturally in my life because you're in the culture and whatnot. But when we were doing Zack and Miri Make a Porno, the ratings board, the MPAA, gave us an NC-17 for the movie. They were like, it goes too far, and you can ask them what area they're focused on, like, what is it? And there's a sequence in the movie where Jeff Anderson is playing Deacon, the guy who's shooting the porno. Jason Mewes' character, Lester, is having sex with Katie Morgan's character. And they're doing anal, and fucking, Seth Rogen leaves the place and, punches the door to leave the place. Jay reacts shocked, and you hear the, as if he pulled out, and then we're on Jeff below who's shooting up, and he gets covered in shit. Fake shit. And he's like, "Ah!" And then we're out of the fucking scene. So they were like, you absolutely can't do this in an R-rated movie. You're shitting all over human beings. You're out of your minds and stuff. So as the filmmaker, you get to go and defend the film. You ask for an appeal screening, and the appeals process goes through NATO, which sounds like, what the fuck? But it stands for National Association of Theater Owners. So the theater owner is considered the last line of defense, right? They're the people that deal with the public when they buy tickets. So if anyone's going to hear a complaint, it's the theater owner. So historically, they've used mostly NATO members to do the appeals process, where they'll watch it and they'll decide, whether this is what they say it is or whether what you say it is. So I'm speaking on my behalf. I've done this process at this point. This is the fourth time I think I did it then. No, third time.
The third or fourth time that you got NC-17?
Yes. So
Nice.
I got an NC-17 on Clerks, and the first one, and I was like, clearly it's an R movie. There's nothing NC-17 in it. Argued that down without making a cut. That's the idea. You can always make cuts and get the rating you want, but the idea is I want to keep everything in the movie. So this time around, man, my argument was, because you get to speak, they get to speak, you get a follow-up, they get a follow-up, and then the jury, if you will, the NATO members decide which way to go. So my defense was, okay, the scene in question that's been cited, the scene where Deacon gets shit on, that is the movie, that's the moment in the movie that's getting us an NC-17. Is this correct? And they were like, yeah. I was like, okay, we're allowed to cite examples of one example of one other movie, maybe two at best. I think at this point it was one. So it's like, okay, then I just want to point out that Jackass the movie has a sequence in it called the fart helmet. And in the fart helmet, another human being shits real shit through the fart helmet into the face of another individual. This happened in real life. This movie is basically a documentary. Ours is all fake poo. That movie was R. We're somehow NC-17, and that's what got them to flip it. They were like, it's good. Logic.
I thought you were going to
That's
say the porta potty catapulted through the air because I was covered in
In
shit.
shit.
Yeah.
But fart helmet got us there.
That was
Imagine
animal
if I
shit, though, right?
The porta potty was filled with dog poop.
Yeah.
Dog poop is what it was.
They have a company, or they had a company
That saves dog poop.
that will sell you as much poop as you want. And then dog poop, and the name of the
Is it
company
just
was
animal poop though? Like, can you be like, I want human shit?
no, you can't buy human. But yeah,
Why?
Bacteria.
You said that a little too quick. Why?
Bacteria.
just because.
But in this best of all possible worlds, you should be able to buy whatever you want.
biohazardous material.
But what
I think,
what animal shit doesn't have bacteria in it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
Good question.
But the name of the company, We Do.
Oh my god! You know what? I felt pretty successful until I heard that. Now I'm like, fuck.
Yeah,
do,
We
do,
Do.
There it
There you
is.
go, Pooper Scooper Service.
Pet waste removal. We'll pick it up. We'll sell it to
Wow.
you.
Go to the pricing. I want to see how much it.
Yeah.
Like
Oh my
300
God.
an ounce.
We do. Oh, so
All
their
right. So
whole
first,
deal
this
is
is
they pick
that's
up
the
poop.
pickup, but they also sell it as well.
Yeah,
Maybe they're like, we don't sell it on our site. That's a backdoor thing.
that's so funny. We do.com. Well, dude, I
I don't know. I feel like we're ending at the wrong time. Really, the show should just begin on the note of, why can't you sell human shit? We'd all be rich. We
Yeah.
we have our own production facility.
Right.
That's why they won't let us do it.
Yep. Well,
But this has been a joy, man. Anytime you're
always a
short a
joy.
guest, I'll pull up, man. I'll
dude,
roll right out.
We'll pull up, and everybody go see the 4:30 movie.
Or find it when it comes to digital. Watch it in the comfort of your own home.
Yeah, or
It's a
watch-
movie about loving movies. I shot it at my own movie theater. I own the movie theater we shot
Nice.
it. Yeah.
Wait, watch it on your cell phone. Who cares?
Exactly. 100%.
long
Just
as you
consume
see
it
it.
sooner or later. See it.
As long as you see it. All right, brother. Hey, man, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me,
And
kids.
yeah, congrats on everything.
Thank you.
It's so nice to know that I don't believe that I'm a narcissist. Yeah, dude. And I'll tell you, I love that guy. You know, I think at this point, after those 2 episodes that we've done together, I could say that he's like a pretty good friend. Yeah. And all of you people who stick around to the end of the Wild Ride podcast, I absolutely consider you guys to be really good friends. And I appreciate you, and I love you, and I want you to have the greatest day ever. Thank you.